Hey everybody, it's Romania Black. So, we're on episode 3 of Sasaki to Miyano, and yeah, so something funny happened on Twitter. I had watched episodes 1 and 2, and I've been watching them through Funimation, and I do like Funimation, but for some reason the internet in my home and Funimation are not compatible. I always get a lot of lags with Funimation. It's just really frustrating. And so it's been nice with shows like Attack on Titan with season 4 part 1. I had someone send me the files to that show and I've just been watching it off my computer. No lag, really good. And so Seth Mary sent me a DM on Twitter and said, hey, I've noticed that you're watching through Funimation, and Funimation, the translations of it are a little bit off. And so this group called September Scanlations had done a scanlation of Sasaki and Miyano and actually did a more close translation that wasn't as censored with the BL themes. And I was like, really? And so they offered to send me videos of the scanlations to watch from my computer. And I was like, okay, sure. So I'm going to do for this episode and see if y'all like it. But I'm going to be watching through this September scanlation, and I have a VLC player, so I was able to upload it and everything, and I did it with episode 1 to make sure that it worked, and it worked great, so I was like, cool, we'll try it for episode 3 then. So we're gonna try that. I'm excited by the fact that there won't be a lag. That'll be good. But also I like the idea, translation's so hard, and I've been talking with a lot of people with The Untamed and Modao Zushi, because I'm watching The Untamed through Netflix, and the subtitles are awful. I mean, I've seen Modao Zushi, the Donghua, and I'm reading the novels, so I get the titles and everything. Netflix doesn't even bother with the Chinese titles. They just say brother or sister. They don't bother with any formalities. And I get it. Translation is hard, and it takes a lot of time. But I appreciate when a fan actually translates the series accurately. Like, I really like the fact that translating accurately and there not being any censorship or being anything cut out or altered that would change the meaning of it. Like, I've had a lot of people with Attack on Titan translations, for example. I'm watching season 4 at the same time, and we have in the comments lots of people say, well, the translation is a little bit off. It actually means this. And in a lot of cases, it changes the meaning of the entire phrase. And I'm like, oh, and then it has a whole new context. So translating is hard, and I'm an English major, and I teach English, and so I understand that there's different language trees, and you have Japanese over here in one language tree, and you have English in another language tree, and they're not exactly compatible. They're totally different language systems, and so translating is difficult when you have things that are on opposite ends of the spectrum. So I get it. So I am going to try this September Scanlations version and see if we like it, and if that's the case, then I'll probably try to do the rest of the series through that. And thank you, Mary Seth. Thank you, and thank you, September Scanlations, for offering to do this service to us, because it takes a lot of time and effort. It's usually, a thankless job, and I really want to support y'all. So thank you very much. I hope y'all give them a shout out, because that's really cool. So I don't know what the subtitles are going to look like, but I'm all for a accurate translation. I remember back in the day reading shonen manga and it would be the fan translations would come out before the official English translations, and there'd be this big debate each week on what the actual translations were, and I was all about it. It's the English nerd in me gets really excited. So I'm pretty excited to see what this is like. But yeah, so I just wanted to start out with that and talk to y'all about it, but that's what we're going to be doing for this episode, and hopefully it works out. I'm pretty excited, but with that being said, let's not waste any more time. Last episode, Sasaki, honey. For the record, I said I was going to follow up Attack on Titan with Sasaki and Miyano. I can't do that, because I watched the last episode 2, after a 2.5 hour reaction and discussion to Attack on Titan, and by the end of it, I was drained, because it basically ended up being like 3.5 hours watching 2 episodes of an anime and discussing it, and I was like, no, it's too much. So I'll probably follow up like the day after Attack on Titan with Sasaki and Miyano. That sounds like a much more reasonable bet. I'll be more refreshed. So with that being said, I've got my tea. It's cold outside, but I got my hot tea, and I got Sasaki and Miyano. And my dude, Sasaki, I feel for him. He is coming to grips with his feelings. What can we do for our poor boy? So I've been told that there are after credit scenes so far for episodes 2, 4, and 5. But there is not an after credit scene for this episode. So good to go. As I'm recording this, episode 5 has come out, and that's as far as we've gotten. So good to know. But yeah, in any case, let's go ahead and start, shall we? I've rambled on enough. So we're going to start this episode of Sasaki and Miyano here in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and let's go. Okay, we're going to go back to this. I like the subs, for the record. I really like the subs. September Scanlations, your subs are good. What I like about them is that they're very literal. And so whenever they have a senpai or a chan, I can't remember if Funimation did that with theirs, but it was very literal. The only thing I noticed that Funimation, they say Fudanshi, and they actually say the terminology, and here they say BL fans. So I'm like, okay, they literally translate it. But I liked the scanlations. I liked the fan translations. I liked them a lot. So I may end up using them for episodes 4 and 5. I like that this episode didn't lag too. That was great. It just went all the way through. No worries. That was a lot of fun. But man, so I think my favorite part about this entire episode is when they're in the bookstore and Miyano is like, he's like, Sasaki doesn't really fit the mold of an uke or a semi. And it's like, no, he doesn't. He doesn't really fit the stereotypical BL trope mold of either. And Miyano's like, I wonder why. And the first thing I could think of is like, because he's a real person. Because real people are more complicated than just the archetypes that we, in fiction and in stories, they're characters and we make them up and we give them those archetypes because we need things to identify them, ways that we can connect them to ourselves and to others. And so when you write a fictional character, yeah, you want to make them realistic, but you can fit them into those niche tropes because they're fictional, they're characters, they're made up. But real people are much more nuanced and complex than that. And a lot of times they are hard to categorize in something that's a general broad category. They're a lot more, they're a lot bigger than that. So I like that this series is identifying that and treating it like a real life situation. I really like that. And I said that from episodes 1 and 2. Sasaki doesn't really fit the typical mold of a character. He likes Miyano and he likes sweet, cute things, but he's not submissive by any means. In this episode, he definitely shows that he doesn't care what anybody thinks. He's very much into defending himself. So he shows like masculine, strong qualities while still being completely comfortable in his sexuality and liking things that are sweet and cute. Like he's just himself and he's totally confident in that. And I love that, again, knowing that Oga is a close friend, I think helps him defend himself because he knows that his friend isn't gonna, like, at the end of the day, judge him. His friend's connecting it to his girlfriend, which is kind of funny. We'll talk about that. But yeah. So, man, right off the bat, getting this with this hot chocolate. And Miyano being self-aware and realizing that, yes, you are flirting with him. And like, I'm like, do you not, the whole thing with the kiss, when he's like, you look like, people with when as soon as he talked about the sensitive tongue, I was like, And he was saying, like, if you have a sensitive tongue, you're not very good at using it. And the first thing my mind was in the gutter, of course. So the first thing I could think of is, oh, well, Sasaki's not a top then because he wouldn't be able to help you prep yourself, right? Right? So he's not a top. If he's got a sensitive tongue, it's not going to help with that. So might need to be a bottom character. That's why I was like, And so that's the first thing that I thought of. But then Miyano, of course, says it must mean that you probably suck at kissing. And Sasaki's like, oh, you want to help me find out and teach me? And like a BL scene, like somebody, it's the stereotypical trope of, oh, I'm not good at kissing. Will you teach me how to kiss? And Sasaki takes him up on it. He's like, oh, are you being serious? And then Miyano realizes what he said and is like, oh, no. And the problem is, I think Miyano, it's not that he doesn't feel that way. I do think Miyano likes guys, but he just doesn't want to admit it because he's afraid of being ostracized for it, and he's afraid of being teased for it, so he doesn't want to come out and say it, and he doesn't want to be wrong about Sasaki. Just like Sasaki, they're both afraid that each other is going to reject them at this point. They're both afraid of that, and Sasaki's afraid of admitting that he likes Miyano to his face because he's like, well, what if Miyano rejects me? And Miyano keeps giving these wishy-washy signals that Sasaki's like, does he or doesn't he? And until we get to the White Day gift, I think he's like really conflicted over whether or not Miyano really does like him. And Miyano just doesn't pick up the cues until he says he likes him on the train. And it's like, he came out and said it, so there's no beating around the bush. But it's so heartbreaking to see Sasaki like want to put his arm around Miyano or want to show affection, but be afraid that Miyano's going to reject him. And Miyano, I'm sure, is not, is not actually flirting with Sasaki because he's afraid of the same thing. They both think that each other is not into them and they're going to reject them. And it's like, no, you're wrong. It would work out, I'm sure, if you just give it a chance, but neither of them want to vocalize it. But yeah, and so then Sasaki asks him about the sensitive tongue, and that's when Miyano tells him about the people with sensitive tongues can't use them well. It's like, And he makes it like a joke, but Sasaki kind of takes it seriously, like, oh, okay, like, was that supposed to be flirty? And then that face, the face that Miyano gives him, where Sasaki's like, I don't know what goes on in these BL fanboys' heads, but the face of Miyano like holding the hot chocolate and looking all innocent, adorable. That was probably one of my favorite shots in the whole episode. But then yeah, Sasaki gets like, he gets sly and teasing. He does like little tongue thing where he's like, and does the sticking out his tongue and everything. And Miyano says, that's not what I meant. I don't need any real life BL romance in my life. So he doesn't say that he's not gay. He just says he doesn't need any real life BL romance in his life. He says he doesn't need any romance right now. So he doesn't quite deny it, but Sasaki's like, And then they go back to the manga thing. Yeah. And trade the manga. And all of his classmates are like, you're still doing that? And Sasaki notes, he's like, you really have a lot of manga because I've borrowed over 30 volumes and you still have more to lend me. And so it's like, we're not sure if he just, gets them from a library, but it seems like he actually owns them. So he does own a lot. And I love it. I just love that he's still so timid about it. And then he's thinking ahead, being like, oh, I want him to read these multiple volumes in a row because then you'll get the better idea about it. And it needs to be read in a set, all that good stuff. It's great. But of course, Sasaki goes back to that. As soon as it happened, I was like, Sasaki's going to go back and reflect on that. And he does. I don't need any real life BL. And he kind of adds to it. He adds to it like wanting to, and he says, God, I want to touch him. And he has like goes where he's going to reach in and grab him. And then he realizes that's just all in his head. And at the bookstore, he wants to put his arm around him and he doesn't do it. And it's like, I feel for Sasaki. I really do. Because Sasaki likes him a lot. And he feels like he can't do anything because he doesn't want to burst the bubble. And it's like, it's so sad. But yeah, and then Miyano, meanwhile, is like, oh, well, I was looking at this from an outsider's perspective. And if somebody had told me that, the whole thing about the sensitive tongue thing, he's like, oh, I was trying to seduce him. But then he goes back to Sasaki in the last episode who said, oh, I want to get to know people that I like. And Miyano's like, was he being serious? And I'm like, yes, he was. But Miyano's like, well, if it was a joke, it wasn't very funny. And it's like, it's not a joke. He's all but come out and said that he likes you. And then he does on the train. And yeah. And Miyano just doesn't know what to do with that. And then I think by the end of the train scene, he's like, why would Senpai say something like that to me? And it's like, you're not just his kohei. He wants to get to know you better. Right? And so then, yeah, we have his friend that's in his class with the blue scarf and the green eyes that has the girlfriend. And his name will come up here real quick. I always forget his name. But yeah, with the girlfriend that he's always hanging out with. And he goes to give... And so then Oga, I'm going to call him Oga because his name is kind of weird. It has a weird... It's Sawa, like Oga Sarasawa or something. It's a very long name. I call him Oga. But Oga confronts Sasaki about reading the BL manga. And of course, Miyano's like, oh my god, someone knows about it. They're going to make... Because that's what he's been afraid of this whole time, is that Sasaki would get made fun of. Probably because he's been made fun of before in the past, and he doesn't want that to be happening to anybody else. And so, of course, he freaks out. But the thing about it is that Sasaki defends himself. And he's like, no, I like it. Because, yeah, Oga's like, you read that stuff? And I like that you can't see Sasaki's eyes when he's talking to Oga. He's, like, looking down, reading the manga. He's like, well, there's some good stories in here if you actually bother to read it. And then the conversation is... Miyano is thinking, there's two lines of dialogue happening at the same time, and Miyano's like, they're going to get the wrong idea about Sasaki Senpai, and it's like, they're not, and they won't, because it's the right idea. But then Oga says, isn't it weird reading about two dudes in love? Should have just made it a guy and a girl then. And And then Sasaki says what we're all thinking about BL, because that's a big argument with BL. Is a lot of people are like, well, couldn't it just be about a guy and a girl? Couldn't it be the same thing? And it's like, technically, yeah, it could. But I would argue that the big appeal about BL is because it's two guys, and there's a lot of extra layers to it. And Miyano starts to blame himself. He's like, oh, they're going to get the wrong idea about Sasaki, and it's all my fault. And then Sasaki says, well, I don't know about that. He tells Oga, he's like, the story could only happen as it did because it was a BL. And that's what makes it good, so what's the big deal? And that's like speaks to Miyano's soul. He's like, oh my God, that's like music to his ears. It's what he's been wanting to hear from the start. And yeah, and that's so true, because that is the thing that, yeah, there's something about a BL series. Like, one, it's a relationship that isn't based entirely on like preconceived notions of like reproduction or things like that. Like, it's just two people in love and story of that relationship naturally developing based on characteristics of love and not biology necessarily. But it's also like two people that are maybe marginalized for that love. It's like that forbidden love angle, right? And so it gets explored in different ways. So there's a lot of scenarios that if it was a guy and a girl, the thematic elements of it wouldn't exactly be the same, right? Like if Fake was a guy and a girl detective, it wouldn't, the social commentary wouldn't be the same, right? And so it would be different. And so there's an argument I would say that the relationships in a BL series is different than in a typical guy-girl relationship. So I'm glad that Sasaki says that and Miyano hears it, right? It's really, really good. And then Oga's like, well, I don't see the draw. And Sasaki just confronts him. He's like, well, what have you got against BL? Like, he's like, why don't you see the draw? What is it? Like, Sasaki doesn't back down. He doesn't say like, okay. He's like, no, what's up? And Oga says, and the reason why is that his girlfriend is a BL fangirl. Like, he says, my girlfriend's totally into it. And he's like, hear me out, Sasaki. I found a book under her pillow. Smart girl. Meaning he was in her room when he found it, right? And then Miyano runs away. And Oga later says, he's like, my girlfriend just wants me to date a dude. And it's like, she fantasizes about him being one of her BL series protagonists. It's like, okay. I can see why he would get annoyed at that, right? I can see why he'd be like, I'm not one of the characters from your BL series. And she'd be like, but you could be. Like, I like it. And so then Miyano runs away and decides to give the manga to him next week. And at first when he did this, I was like, oh, is Miyano backing down? But no, it's because he got flustered because he thought what Sasaki said in that moment was really cool. It's like, ah! I love it. I love it. And his friends, I love that his friends is like, okay. like, here's Miyano and Sasaki losing their mind over each other. And their friends are all like, sure, okay. Did we expect anything different? Just admit that you two like each other already. Like, let's get it over with. But Miyano realizing that Sasaki is cool. And that maybe he is attracted to Sasaki. I feel like him confessing that he liked BL series and Miyano hearing that was the spark, right? That was the rock hitting the flint that was igniting the flame. That he's like, wow, Sasaki is really cool. Because a few episodes ago he said, oh, Sasaki looks cool, but he's a dork. And now his actions have kind of rang a little truer to Miyano, and he's like, no, he's actually really cool. And maybe I think something else of him rather than just being friends. Like, just that little moment, right? He's like, I felt that way ever since the beginning. And then I love that they call him a roly-poly. Because he's all curled up in the corner of the classroom. I thought for a second that maybe Sasaki would like give him a coat or something, but he already has a coat draped over him, so it'd be kind of overkill. And then, yeah, one of you commented in the YouTube comments that Sasaki has like the cardigan and it kind of looks like Mafiu from Given. It really does. The red hair and the cardigan, it's kind of like Mafiu. And in that relationship, Mafiu is the bottom character, so I don't know, right? Interesting. And then, yeah, Sasaki is like all but, he's just he stares at Miyano and he reaches out to like almost like pull his hair back or something. And he catches himself. Miyano notices it and he's like, And Sasaki's like, damn it, I keep slipping up and wanting to do something. And it's just, this isn't good. But then after that happens, he suggests that they walk home together and it's like, you're not helping your cause. You're just furthering it, right? Mm-hmm. And he offers for them to go and see the new volumes on sale. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so then after that, we have the White Day gifts. And I forget about White Day. In the US, we don't have White Day. We just have Valentine's Day on February 14th, and that's it. But in Japan, they have White Day, which is a few weeks after Valentine's Day. And it's where, the girls give the guys something on Valentine's Day, and the guys give them something in return, right? So again, that's establishing this kind of relationship of the uke and the seme somewhat, because you're framing Sasaki as the uke in that sense, because he gets the White Day gift from Miyano, who that's the more masculine thing to do. And I also think that it's interesting that Sasaki did give him the candies off screen. He did give him the Valentine's Day chocolates, and they're the one thing he hasn't eaten during exams. It's almost like he's revering them. He's like, and so an existence worth 320 yen. Like, it's a little pricey chocolate bag. Yeah, because he's got the 5 yen chocolates that he's been munching on for exams. And then the spotlight comes on what Sasaki gave him. And it's like 300 times as much, right? Like, it's a special, ornate gift. And Miyano's like, I can't just eat that, right? And so he's keeping it. I like that a lot. He's like, well, maybe I don't need to give him anything in return. I thought he'd give him a manga. I thought he would give him, like, a manga volume to keep. That's what I thought he would do, but that's too much. That's an actual, like, couple's gift. We're not there yet. So just giving him some candy seems like in a nice, cute little bag is the way to go. And then, of course, Sasaki freaks out. He's like, I didn't think about this. I didn't think about a gift in return. And then he, like, has a moment. He's like, his heart is like, I need a moment. Like, his scarf's come unraveled. Like, he's just, like, so mortified. He's like, I didn't expect this, and my crush is giving me a White Day gift. And I like the Hirano. Hirano is so, he knows so much. He's just like, and also Hirano dyeing his hair. What the hell? And he dyed it just for graduation. I guess so he looked presentable to his family for graduation. Interesting. I'm like, dude, I understand. I dye my hair like every 8 weeks. And so I get that it damages it. But I'm also like, you had to do more than one session to go from blonde back to black. It doesn't go that easy. Does not happen that easy. So I'm like, interesting. You get a lot of toner put on that to make it work. But I also like that there's like all this chatter in the classroom whenever Sasaki is fetched to give the White Day gift to. And Sasaki's like, I don't want to be around all these clowns. Let's go somewhere more intimate to have our conversation. And so they do. They get away from the candy party, and then they go to the stairwell, and that's when he gives him the White Day gift. And I love that Sasaki's just staring at him, and there's all the shapes and everything, and he's like, did you give this to anyone else? And when Miyano says no, that's when he breaks down. He's like, oh shit. He's like, ah! He's like, because in the last episode, in the end credits scene, he was lamenting the fact that all these other people gave chocolates to Miyano, and he was afraid that Miyano thought that one of them was more special than what Sasaki gave him. And he's finding out in this episode that's not the case. He's the only one he gave the White Day gift back to. And it's just like Sasaki Senpai EXE has stopped working. Like, fizzled, malfunctioned, just reboot needed. I love it. It's absolutely wonderful. It's great. And he's just so embarrassed. And Hirano is like, what is wrong with you? I love Hirano's eyes. They're like turquoise and dark blue and purple together. They're like a really crazy pattern. It's interesting. And so we cut to 2 weeks later, and they talk about like spring break and everything and going with their girlfriend. And I guess maybe it's graduation. It's not spring break, because I guess Japan graduates different time. In the US, you graduate usually in May, and the school year starts in August, and it's different in Japan. So that's interesting. But yeah, so the one guy that has the roots grown out with the blonde hair, we don't know much about him yet. We know that Kurosaga, one of them, the guy with the green eyes and the glasses, he has a girlfriend, and we find out that Oga has a girlfriend, and Hirano has a boyfriend, and that's all we know. We haven't met the boyfriend yet, the roommate. We haven't met him yet. And it's funny because Miyano looks over, and as Sasaki is getting bonked on by Hirano, but Miyano doesn't know it's Hirano, you almost wonder for a second if maybe he's kind of jealous, being like, oh, who's messing over with Sasaki over there? But we know it's Hirano, or we find out that. And then, yeah, so his first year's already over. Like, it's already the end of first year. And so Sasaki is going to be a third year, and Miyano is going to be a second year. Interesting. Yeah. And then he realizes, he's like, we only have one more year of school together. And then he'll be graduating and I'll still be in school. So, yeah. Sasaki Senpai is going to graduate before me. Interesting, right? Interesting. We've only got 1 year left. That's crazy. Like, they just got close the end of his first year. And then, yeah. I love seeing Hirano with the dark hair. Let me go here. I love it. And yeah, they're feeling his hair being really fine. And then Sasaki's like, I've only dyed my hair black once when I was a first year. And I wish they would have shown us what he looked like. I wish they would have shown him with the black hair, but we don't get to see it. So, But yeah. So then we get, let me get over to the new friend. Yep. And then, yeah, him with the blue highlights. Oga Sawara. Oga Sawara is a mouthful. I'm awful at pronunciation, so I'm going to call him Oga. Because Oga Sawara is just too much. It's too much. So it's just going to be Oga. Oga Senpai. But yeah, Oga has the blue highlights. Like, he didn't need to dye his whole hair. I love that everybody's eyes are kind of ombre. It's really pretty. But he has the black scarf. He's very, traditional, straight-laced. Like, the typical straight dude. Which I like. I like that this show gives you a variety, because in a lot of BL series, all the couples and all the guys that are in it are either bisexual or gay or pansexual. There's not really any straight characters in a lot of BL series, because it's mostly just these guys all hanging out together and they're all in relationships with other guys. But I like that this series, you have characters that have girlfriends, and then you have characters like Hirano that have boyfriends, and they're all interacting like normal people, and they're all friends, and it's totally cool, right? It's interesting. Of course, in Sasaki and Miyano's case, they haven't confessed that they like each other yet. So there's that. But everybody knows Hirano does, so. But yeah. And then I like that there's that one guy there. Or no, that's, I say the one guy with the closed eyes, but no, it's Hirano. It's throwing me off that he has black hair in this. I'm wondering if he's going to keep black hair for the rest of the season, or if he's going to instantly bleach it now that graduation's going to be over. And then, yeah, this is one of our classmates, Ogasawara. And Sarkohei. And he says Mia, and he almost says Mia-chan, but he stops himself. He's like, Miyano and Kurosawa-kun. So Kurosawa. Kurosawa's the one with green eyes. And then he's like, Miyano. He's the guy you're flirting with. He's the guy that you're borrowing the manga from. Like, I like how he instantly, zeroes in. It's the BL fanboy. He's like, Senpai, how does he know about me? So I like that Hirano, has protected, Miyano. Hirano has protected Miyano in all this. And it seems like Oga is, protective over Sasaki, kind of. It's interesting. Interesting. It's like, Senpai, what's this world coming to now that not just chicks, but even guys are into BL series? I like that. He's not on board with the agenda, clearly. And Miyano's like, excuse me? And he's like, oh, he's the one who gave Sasaki a hard time. It's this guy with the blue highlights in his hair. And then Kurosawa's like, is something wrong? And then I like that, it almost seems like he's about to say something, but Sasaki stops him. He's like, don't get all pissy. He's like, I'm not getting pissy. Just because your girlfriend is into bad boy ukes. And that gets Miyano's attention. The little hair flips up. And Kurosawa notices it. He's like, oh, he's back. We're good. The BL manga she was hiding had this punk kid getting jumped by a beefy dude. And then I like that Hirano's like, wait, you read it? How did you know? Because, yeah, he said it was under her pillow. So, they draw Oga really good. Like, he's a very handsome guy. He's like, the BL girls are that way, They get all excited just seeing two guys stand next to each other. Well, that's not true. Right? And then I like that he, laments to Hirano. He's like, I love her so much. But she just wants me to bone another dude. Has she seriously felt that way about me the entire time? She just has this fantasy of him getting with another guy. And Hirano's like, we're going to need to get a send-off party for this guy right now. I love it. And every time seemingly that something BL is brought up, there's the triangles and all the primary colors popping around. It's very interesting. It's like, you want us to join sending this guy off? And of course, Kurosawa is like, I've got plans with my girlfriend. Like, he always has plans with his girlfriend. And then, right after saying he has plans with his significant other, Sasaki's like, do you have plans, Mia-chan? And then they decide to go to the bookstore together. And yeah, and you could tell at the bookstore that Sasaki wants to have what he sees these other couples having. He sees these other couples like at the bookstore being totally natural and it's all normal. And Sasaki wants that with Miyano, but there's a barrier there, right? And so then we get them on the train, and when he thinks that Miyano's asleep, that's when he's like, I can't hold it anymore. And that's when he admits it, that he likes him. And I love that. When he gets off the train, he's like, okay, we'll see you, Miyano. See you next school year. We're off for break, but when we meet again, it'll be the new year. No pressure, right? And that's when Miyano reveals what he said. It's that I like you. And he says something here. He says, Senpai, he says, if he meant it about me as a Kohei, would he have said that to me right here on the train while he thought I was asleep? So he's like, he's basically implying, Miyano's like, if there was nothing to it, if it was just platonic, would he have said it to me? Would he have waited until I was asleep to say it? Or did he wait until I was asleep to say it because he means it romantically and in that voice? And we don't get to hear him say it. He's like, in that voice while I was sleeping. And Miyano is just so blushing. So what do we do with that? Yeah, what do I do now? You've heard that. So do you confess to Sasaki that you heard him say it? Do you hide it? That's not going to work, just hiding it. So the show, it's pure sugar, and I love it. But I think I love it more now that we're getting more into the dynamics of these other guys. We haven't met Hirano's roommate yet. We've not met him. And Oga and Kurosawa both have girlfriends. We don't know anything about the guy that has the bleach blonde, grown out highlights. But I think it's an interesting combination of characters. And Oga is an interesting add to this mix because Oga seems kind of like not on board with the BL agenda. And I'm like, I wonder if that's going to change if Sasaki confesses, like what that's going to do with the dynamic, how that works. It seems like it's not that he harbors any ill will towards it. He's just frustrated because his girlfriend's all into it and he like wants the girlfriend to be all into him. And she instead has this fantasy and it's like, sorry, bro. Having a tough time. But yeah. This was pure sugar and I loved it. So there's that. But oh gosh, y'all, I'm really excited to see what's going to happen in episode 4 now. And there's going to be 2 post-credit scenes in both episode 4 and episode 5. So that is exciting. I really like the scanlation version. I think unless y'all note otherwise, I'm going to stick with it if I can. Hopefully I can get future episodes. I've got episodes 4 and 5 that I'm going to be able to react to with the scanlations. So hopefully I can get future ones as well because I really like them. They're really good. So, and they were really easy to follow. I thought they were great. So, unless y'all tell me otherwise, I think I'm going to try to stick with them if I can. But we'll see. So, I'm curious to know your thoughts down below. Please no spoilers, but I'm curious to hear your comments about this episode. Thank you so much for watching the reaction. And yeah, as always, please stay safe. Have a wonderful week, and I'll be back very soon. With episode 4 of Sasaki to Miyano. Bye.